I fell in love with my therapist, and it ruined everything. I never thought I'd be in this kind of mess, but here I am, caught in a whirlwind of guilt and confusion that seems impossible to escape. It's been a journey full of twists and turns that I never saw coming. Let me take you through the whole story from the beginning. Maybe, by the end, you'll understand why I'm feeling so lost and what led me to this point. So, let's rewind about a year. I started seeing my therapist, who specializes in eating disorders. This has been a significant part of my life for as long as I can remember. I had hoped that by seeking help, I'd finally get a handle on my struggles with food and self-image. When I first began therapy, everything was straightforward. We focused on my eating habits, my goals, and ways to manage my impulses. It was all very professional, and I was grateful for his guidance. I felt safe and supported, and I believed that the boundaries between us were clear and appropriate. In the beginning, our sessions were all about discussing my eating patterns and setting goals for improvement. It was routine and expected. I had my own set of issues, and he had his methods for addressing them. I was fine with the structure and the predictable nature of our interactions. I felt like I was making progress, albeit slowly. I appreciated his professional demeanor and the way he remained objective throughout our sessions. It was exactly what I needed. But then, something began to shift. It started with small changes. Longer eye contact, a hand on my shoulder that lingered just a bit too long. At first, I dismissed these as coincidences or maybe just the warmth of his therapeutic approach. But as time went on, these small gestures started to make me question my own perceptions. Was I misinterpreting his behavior? Was I reading too much into it? One particular session stands out vividly in my mind. It was a rough day, and we had delved into some deep emotional territory. I was feeling particularly vulnerable and exposed. After a particularly intense discussion, he comforted me in a way that felt different from the norm. His hand on my shoulder was more than just a reassuring touch. It felt personal, almost intimate. I didn't know how to process it at the time. Was it just my heightened emotional state, or was there something more to his behavior? As weeks turned into months, our sessions began to evolve. They became more personal, and our conversations ventured into areas beyond my eating habits. We started discussing my dreams, my fears, and my personal life. The professional boundaries that once defined our relationship began to blur. It was subtle at first. An increased level of personal sharing on both sides, a more casual tone in our conversations. But as time went on, these changes became more pronounced. One evening, after a particularly emotionally charged session, I mentioned how much I wished I had someone to celebrate my progress with. I was feeling proud of the strides I had made, but I also felt a sense of loneliness. His response was warm and understanding. He suggested we go out for drinks to mark the occasion. At first, I thought it was just a kind gesture, an extension of his professional support. But deep down, I couldn't ignore a flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, there was something more to his offer. We met at a charming bar, and the atmosphere was relaxed and intimate. We found ourselves sitting closer than usual, our knees almost touching under the table. The conversation flowed easily, and there was a noticeable shift in the air. He reached out and took my hand in his. It was a simple touch, but it felt charged with meaning. I could sense an unspoken tension between us, something that went beyond mere friendship or professional support. As the evening progressed, our conversation became increasingly personal. We shared stories about our lives, our aspirations, and our fears. The boundaries between therapist and client seemed to dissolve further with each passing moment. His attentiveness, combined with his intense gaze, created an atmosphere that was both exhilarating and disconcerting. His compliments about my progress were more than just professional praise. They felt like affirmations of a deeper connection. When we kissed, it was as if the world had shifted. The kiss was tender and exploratory, filled with a sense of longing that had been building for some time. It felt surreal, like stepping into a different reality where the usual boundaries no longer applied. We ended up at his place, and the night unfolded quickly. One moment, we were talking and laughing, and the next, we were in his bed. The connection was intense, almost like an escape from my usual struggles. It was a rush of emotions, excitement, guilt, and a deep sense of confusion. The next morning, I woke up with a heavy heart. The exhilaration of the night before was overshadowed by the weight of what we had done. I knew it was a massive ethical breach. The excitement and intensity of the previous night were now replaced by an overwhelming sense of guilt and dread. I had crossed a line that I knew was fundamentally wrong. The exhilaration was fleeting. The reality of the situation was harsh. I knew I needed to find a new therapist. The thought of starting over was daunting. It wasn't just about finding someone new to talk to. It was about opening up to a stranger about my deepest struggles. Then, just when I thought things couldn't get any more complicated, I received a call from his office. They informed me that he was under investigation for professional misconduct. The news hit me like a ton of bricks. I had no idea what this meant or how it related to me. At first, I thought it was just about our situation, but it quickly became clear that the implications were far broader. I was left with a torrent of questions and emotions. Was I just one case among many? Had he engaged in similar behavior with other clients? The realization was disorienting. I had hoped our encounter was an isolated incident, a result of personal feelings that had gotten out of hand. But now, it seemed there was a troubling history I wasn't aware of. I began to dig deeper into his background, trying to make sense of what was happening. The investigation revealed a pattern of inappropriate behavior. I discovered that he had multiple complaints against him. It wasn't just about me. There were others who had faced similar situations. The weight of this revelation was crushing. I felt a profound sense of betrayal. It wasn't just about my personal feelings or my mistakes. It was about a larger systemic issue of unethical behavior. The process of finding a new therapist was overwhelming. I had to start from scratch, building trust with someone new. It wasn't just about finding a new therapist. It was about navigating the emotional fallout from the investigation and dealing with the practical aspects of moving on. It felt like an insurmountable challenge, and the thought of it was exhausting. As the days passed, I felt the weight of the situation pressing heavily on me. The investigation was a storm I couldn't escape, and the prospect of finding a new therapist was overwhelming. I began the search for a new therapist, hoping to find someone who could help me navigate this crazy period. Little did I know that the new therapist would unravel another layer of complexity in this already tangled mess. I carefully selected a new therapist, someone with strong credentials and positive reviews. I needed to open up about my past experiences and work through the emotional fallout from my previous sessions. The new therapist, let's call him Dr. Harper, he was kind, attentive, and seemed genuinely interested in my well-being. We started with the basics, discussing my history, my goals, and my current struggles. For the first few sessions, it felt like a fresh start, a chance to heal and move forward. However, as time went on, something felt off. There were subtle hints that didn't quite add up. Dr. Harper was too familiar with some of the specifics of my previous therapy. They seemed to know details about my case that weren't in the official records or our initial sessions. I brushed it off at first, attributing it to coincidence or my own heightened sensitivity. But as the weeks progressed, the unsettling feeling grew stronger. One afternoon, during a particularly candid session, Dr. Harper made an offhand comment about my former therapist, suggesting an unusually deep familiarity with his methods and personal style. My heart skipped a beat. It seemed too specific, too intimate. I tried to shake it off, convincing myself that I was being paranoid. After all, therapists often discuss professional practices, right? Despite my efforts to dismiss the unease, it gnawed at me. I decided to do some discreet digging. Using some basic online searches and a bit of networking, I discovered something shocking. Dr. Harper and my former therapist were more than just colleagues. They were close associates. They had collaborated on various projects and had shared professional networks. The deeper I dug, the more I realized that Dr. Harper had been a silent partner in the same ethical breaches that had marred my previous therapy. My heart raced as I pieced together the information. It wasn't just that they knew each other. They had been working together on a broader scale. Dr. Harper's approach to therapy was eerily similar to my former therapist's, almost as if it was a continuation of the same manipulative style. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. I was trapped in a cycle of exploitation that spanned multiple therapists. I knew I had to take action. I reported my findings to the relevant authorities and the professional board overseeing therapists. I provided them with the evidence I had gathered and detailed my experiences with both therapists. It was a difficult decision, but it was necessary to break the cycle of unethical behavior. In the meantime, I had to find a new path forward. The investigation into Dr. Harper and my former therapist was just beginning, and I had to be prepared for whatever came next. I continued seeking support, looking for a therapist who would offer a genuine, ethical approach to healing.